Ghosts have fascinated believers and non-believers for centuries. They have provided endless hours of discussion, and the debate as to whether ghosts exist or not still rages as it has done ever since the first ghost sighting was reported. There isn't a single culture or civilization in the world today that is not acquainted with ghosts in some way, and many religions worship a form of holy ghost or spirit. Although the subject of ghosts continues to be studied by parapsychologists, academics, and serious investigators, no convincing evidence to prove or disprove that these phantoms truly roam among the living has ever been presented. Just as there is a body of evidence to support the claims of the believers, there are many arguments put forward to prove the point made by the non-believers. Ultimately, everything depends upon what you believe or have experienced. In simple terms, the word ghost is widely used to describe the spirit or disembodied personality of a deceased person which chooses to linger in the physical world. Ghosts are usually believed to haunt particular places where they died, or places that were of great significance to them during their lifetime. In some cases, the spirit is attached to a certain item or has unfinished business. Believers of this phenomena suggest that there are many ways in which a ghost can manifest itself. Some that are seen are translucent, luminous, shadowy, or even lifelike, and in some reports they appear as a ball of light or vapor. It is important for those who have an interest in this subject and investigators alike to become familiar with all of these manifestations for the purpose of knowledge and research. As investigating the paranormal develops, the definitions and descriptions of these manifestations may be subject to change as new information becomes available. The definitions and descriptions of these manifestations may be subject to change as new information becomes available. But for now, here are the present thoughts compiled by researchers over many years of study. Orbs are the most common anomaly photographed by investigators. They appear as luminous balls of light hovering above the ground. In the early days of investigating the paranormal, to capture an orb on camera was considered to be a prized photo. In recent times, however, investigators are finding out that some digital cameras will produce false orbs with these characteristics, and they can no longer be viewed as authentic. More impressive orbs are filmed with a lingering trail. This is said to indicate that the orb was traveling at a fast speed at the time the photograph or footage was taken. Some experts say that 85% of photographed orbs are created inadvertently by weather conditions or a dusty environment, a belief that is agreed upon by the majority of open-minded investigators. The term was originally used to describe the substance that emitted from a medium during a séance. It is generally referred to as spirit fog or mist, and is usually displayed as a swirl within a vaporous cloud. It is important to note, however, that certain cameras can inadvertently create this effect artificially, especially in cold weather, by a person exhaling too close to the camera lens when the picture was taken. Extra caution must be taken when submitting these ectoplasmic images as evidence. Smoking whilst investigating is strictly prohibited for obvious reasons. A vortex is a very strange occurrence that appears as a swirling funnel shape when moving. They have been known to appear in numerous photographs of a certain person taken on separate occasions, leading some to believe that they are some kind of spirit guardian. Others believe that they are a liminal portal which enables the spirits to travel from one world to another. Whatever vortices are, they are photographed all over the world. Some psychics claim to see them on a regular basis, but for the majority of us, it is an extremely rare occurrence. To capture an apparition on film is what every investigator aspires to, but seldom, if ever, achieves. They appear in a transparent human form, wearing the clothing of their period. It is also interesting to note that they normally appear faint and disfigured, as if incomplete. It is said that an apparition can appear directly next to a living person, and it would still not necessarily show up on any camera 99.9% of the time. In folklore and the paranormal, a poltergeist is a manifestation of an invisible but noisy disruptive energy. The term comes from the German words Poltern, which means disturbance, and Geist, which means ghost or spirit. Most accounts of a poltergeist involve noises that have no apparent cause. Other phenomena include inanimate objects being picked up and thrown as if by an invisible person, noises such as knocking, or even human voices, and physical attacks on human beings, such as pinching, biting, and hitting, have been documented. Poltergeists have traditionally been described in folklore as troublesome spirits who, unlike ghosts, haunt a particular person instead of a specific location. Many psychologists and parapsychologists believe that the poltergeist phenomena is created by a living individual, and in many cases, a young child appears to be the catalyst for the disturbances. A poltergeist infestation usually only lasts for a short time, although there has been exceptions to this belief. The earliest recorded case dates back to the 1st century. A demon is considered an unclean spirit, more specifically an evil angel, which may cause demonic possession. This involves a victim's body being taken over by one of these evil entities. This occurrence may call for intervention from a church in the form of an exorcism, as was the case with the alleged possession of the young German woman Anneliese Michel in 1975. The affair has been labeled as a misidentification of mental illness, negligence, abuse, and religious hysteria. Unfortunately for Anneliese, the event was too much for her mind and body to endure, and she passed away before the exorcism was completed. After an investigation, the state prosecuted and maintained that Michel's death could have been prevented. The state recommended that all those involved be heavily fined. These ghosts appear as a shadow of some kind, similar to ghost mist, but with much more form. When photographed, it would be easy to confuse them with natural shadows. They are usually evasive, and on the rare occasions they have been seen, it is normally out of the corner of the eye, or as they are darting through a wall. The Fox sisters from New York played an important role in the creation of spiritualism. The two youngest sisters used rappings to convince onlookers that they were communicating with spirits. Their older sister then took charge and managed their careers for some time. They all enjoyed success as mediums for many years. In 1888, Margaret confessed that their rappings had been a hoax and publicly demonstrated their method. She attempted to recount her confession the next year, but their reputation was ruined, and in less than 5 years, they were all dead. Spiritualism continued as if the confessions of the Fox sisters had never happened. And the spiritualist movement developed and reached its peak from the 1840s to the 1920s. The religion flourished, maintaining its popularity through pamphlets, science tours, and activities from accomplished mediums. By the late 1880s, the credibility of the movement weakened due to accusations of fraud, and former spiritualist organizations began to appear. Today, spiritualism is practiced primarily through various spiritualist churches. Some mediums have accomplished celebrity status through TV shows such as Most Haunted and Psychic Detectives, to name a few, enabling these mediums to reach millions of viewers with their gift. Communicating with the departed has never been more profitable. A classic haunted house depicted in popular culture is that of a brooding, dark and gloomy place, filled with eerie corridors and creaking floorboards. Cinema has set the tone in such movies as The Haunting and The Woman in Black. This image, however, could not be further from the truth. In reality, the majority of these supposedly haunted buildings are normal houses inhabited by normal, everyday people who witness paranormal activity in their surroundings, which in most cases brings upset and anxiety into their lives. The list of alleged haunted houses is too numerous to mention here, but let us concentrate on three of the most prolific hauntings to come under the media spotlight in modern times. The small village of Borley in Essex is not the place you would normally expect to be associated with ghostly goings-on. Yet this beautiful rural area has a sinister reputation known throughout the world. It was once the site of the infamous Borley Rectory, reputed to be the most haunted house in England. The rectory was built in 1863 for the Reverend Henry Bull. It was allegedly built on the site of a monastery, and the ghost of a sorrowful nun who drifted along the so-called Nun's Walk was already well known to the villagers at the time. An old story claimed that she was the spirit of a sister who had fallen in love with a monk from nearby Borley Monastery. The two had tried to elope together but had been caught. The monk was executed and the nun bricked up in the cellars of the monastic building. Reverend Bull had a summer house built, overlooking the Nun's Walk, so he could watch her manifestation. After Reverend Bull's death, his son Harry took over the rectory. Harry claimed to see a ghostly coach racing up the rectory drive. 1927 saw the death of the last of the Bulls, and the Reverend Eric Smith and his wife arrived at the rectory. They had been warned of its reputation and took the precaution of inviting the well-known psychic researcher Harry Price. Price's arrival appeared to set in motion an outburst of unexplained poltergeist activity. Objects were smashed and stolen from the investigator by unseen forces. It was all too much for the Smiths, and they left after only 2 years. Although troublesome, the ghosts at the rectory had been relatively peaceful until October 1930, when Reverend Lionel Foyster and his wife Marianne moved into the house. Their time of residence would see a marked increase in the paranormal activity. The worst of the incidents seemed to involve Mrs. Foyster. She was thrown from her bed at night, slapped by invisible hands, and was forced to dodge flying objects which flew at her day and night. There began to appear a series of scrawled messages on the walls of the house, written by an unknown hand. They seemed to be pleading with Mrs. Foyster, using phrases like, "Light mass prayers" and "Marianne, please get help." Harry Price was asked by the Daily Mirror newspaper to investigate the ongoing haunting. Because nearly all of the poltergeist-like activity occurred when Marianne was present, Price was inclined to attribute it to her manipulations. Price did believe in the possibility of the ghostly nun and some of the other reports of phenomena. The rectory did not fit into preconceived notions of a haunted house, which was one of the reasons that it would go on to gain such a reputation. There was something about the location itself that seemed to invite energy in and also to act as a storage battery that Marianne could somehow tap into. the Reverend Foister had Borley Rectory exorcised. The result was positive at first, and the manifestation stopped. The Foisters had had enough. The family left, and all successive reverends refused to live in the house. Intrigued by the further reports of psychic activity at Borley, Price returned in 1937 and rented the building himself. He advertised in the Times newspaper for trustworthy assistance in a prolonged psychic investigation. Harry Price's lease had ended later that year, and the building was taken on by one Captain Gregson. An burning oil lamp unaccountably fell over in the house, and Borley Rectory burnt to the ground. Witnesses claimed to have seen ghostly figures roaming around through the flames. Harry Price returned again in 1943, digging in the cellars. He discovered the jawbone of a young woman. Convinced that it was part of the body of the spectral nun, he attempted to end the hauntings by giving the bone a Christian burial. It does not seem to have worked. The supernatural happenings are still reported to this day from the site of the rectory and the nearby churchyard. Arguably the most famous, real-life poltergeist ever recorded. The Enfield poltergeist still splits opinion straight down the middle. The apparent poltergeist infestation started between August and September 1978, with an added outburst in August 1980. The activity occurred at Enfield in North London. 284 Green Street was a council house rented by Peggy Hodgson, a single parent, and her children. The first manifestation of the poltergeist happened one night when Janet and her brother Peter complained to their mother that their beds were shaking about in a strange way. The experience frightened the family so badly that they ran out of the house to seek help from neighbors and called the police in to investigate. The police found no trace of any human intruder, but it is reported that one of the police officers witnessed a chair moving several feet across the floor without human intervention.
It came off the floor, or nearly a half-inch, I should say, and I saw it slide off to the right, about 3.5 to 4 feet before it came to rest.
Mrs. Hodgson sought help from a local vicar and a psychic medium, but they were unable to explain what seemed to be a paranormal attack on the family. The news of the activity attracted various visitors, including mediums and members of the press. One photographer reported being hit on the forehead by a Lego brick that apparently came from nowhere. After visiting the house, a senior reporter from the Daily Mirror suggested that the Society for Psychical Research should be contacted to investigate. The incidents were investigated by Maurice Grosse and Guy Lyon Playfair, members of the SPR, who were convinced by the evidence which they encountered during their 13-month investigation. Playfair documented the investigation in his book, This House is Haunted. The poltergeist became interactive, first by communicating through rapping and later by speaking through Janet.
Can you tell me where you are at the moment in the room?
On top of Janet.
Why do you sleep on top of Janet?
It's my bed.
We know you sleep on the bed. Why can't Janet feel you?
I'm invisible.
You're invisible? Why are you invisible?
Because I'm a G, H-O-S-T.
Janet was thrown around her bedroom, and there was unexplained fires and electrical failures, unexplained movement of objects, and in one instance a heavy metal gas fire was ripped from the wall in the girl's bedroom. The Enfield poltergeist became a media sensation and was reported all over the world. It has not been proven that the case of the Enfield poltergeist was a real instance of poltergeist activity and is still debated about to this day. There seems to be little doubt that one of the most famous American hauntings to ever be documented occurred in the quiet town of Amityville, located in the state of New York. The peaceful community on Long Island's South Shore became infamous in the latter part of the 20th century. The horrific carnage that preceded the story of the Amityville Horror began one dark night in November 1974. The DeFeo family, Ronald Sr. and Louise, their two young sons Mark and John, and two daughters Dawn and Allison, were sleeping peacefully in their comfortable three-story Dutch colonial home in Amityville. The silence of the house was shattered when Ronald DeFeo, nicknamed Butch, murdered his parents and siblings with a high-powered rifle. The trial of Ronald DeFeo for the murder of his entire family began on October 14, 1975. 2 weeks later, he was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison on all 6 counts. He was incarcerated with the New York State Department of Corrections until his death in March 2021. The tragedy in Amityville made grim news, but few outside of New York ever heard about the house until some time later. The horrendous events that followed began on December 18, 1975, when a young couple named George and Kathy Lutz bought the house on Ocean Avenue for $80,000. Just a week before Christmas, they moved into their new dream home. They would later claim that the dream home soon turned into a nightmare. The family managed to hold out for 28 days before they gathered up their possessions and fled the house. According to their story, they left so quickly that they didn't take their furniture or many of their other possessions with them. Demonic spirits, they said, had driven them from their home. Not long after the Lutz family left the house, local residents were stunned to see New York Channel 5's news team doing a live news feed from the house on Ocean Avenue. The news crew filmed a séance and a dramatic investigation of the house conducted by Ed and Lorraine Warren, the self-proclaimed exorcist and medium. It was obvious to them, they said, that the Lutz family had left in a hurry and that the house was haunted by the angry spirits of Indians who had once inhabited the area. During the course of the investigation, Gene Campbell took a series of infrared time-lapse photographs. One of the images allegedly shows a demonic boy with glowing eyes standing at the foot of the staircase. George and Kathy later teamed up with a writer named Jay Anson, and together they authored what would become a best-selling book called The Amityville Horror. The book would then go on to spawn a Hollywood movie and a number of sequels. Most amazing was the fact that the Lutz claimed this terrifying story was absolutely true. But not everyone was convinced. The publication of the Amityville Horror Conspiracy by the noted paranormal investigator Stephen Kaplan argued that George and Kathy Lutz were deliberately defrauding the public. This should have put an end to the whole affair, but in fact, more than 2 decades later, people still question the facts behind the case and the real events that may or may not have occurred in Amityville. Labeling a location as haunted is one thing, proving it has ghostly activity is another. In a lot of cases, a priest would be called in to bless the building in a bid to expel the uninvited resident ghost. However, if for any reason this is not successful, then contacting a team of investigators may be the next course of action, in which any evidence of a haunting can be monitored and documented in a controlled manner. The origins of scientifically investigating the paranormal arguably began with Harry Price, who gained public notoriety through his research into exposing fake mediums. Price devised a ghost hunting kit which was state-of-the-art at the time. As we have heard earlier, he is most famous for his long-standing investigation at Borley Rectory, a building he dubbed the most haunted house in England. Price's widow donated all of his research to the University of London. This included all of his reports, press cuttings, and photographs. The Harry Price archive is still used by students to this day. During the 1960s onward, Peter Underwood, who personally knew Price, would take over as Britain's #1 researcher. He became president of the Ghost Club, a prestigious society that investigated all things paranormal. He was once named King of the Ghost Hunters by the Ghost Research Foundation. Ghost hunters normally utilized a number of electronic devices to monitor any fluctuations in temperature and energy levels. Traditional techniques such as interviews and researching the history of a location are also used. Films such as Ghostbusters and Grave Encounters, and TV programs such as Most Haunted, Ghost Adventures, My Ghost Story, Ghost Hunters, and a saturation of YouTube paranormal channels, along with the increasing availability of high-tech equipment, are partly responsible for the boom in ghost hunting. Traditional methods of investigating this subject appear to have been forgotten due to this technology and are now only undertaken by a small majority of old-school researchers. Despite its lack of acceptance in academic circles, especially by well-known skeptics such as Kieran O'Keefe and Chris French, and social media debunkers such as Beardo Get Scared and the Side-Eye Guy, ghost hunting has never been more popular. Ghosts come in many different forms, and this introduction into their world will never answer the endless questions this fascinating subject brings. But as long as there are people willing to spend their time in darkened rooms and dark cellars searching for the truth, ghosts will remain in our minds and cultures forever. Traditional festivals like Halloween, China's Ghost Month, and Mexico's Day of the Dead will continue to bring spooks knocking on our doors for many years to come. And let's face it, whether you're a believer or a skeptic, everyone likes a good ghost story, don't they?